Welcome back. Now, Black History Month is a celebration of the contributions, achievements, and history of African Americans. It's a time to honor and reflect on the enduring legacy and impact of Black culture and civil rights. We're now joined via Zoom by Kavena Hambira, who is a Namibian filmmaker and adjunct professor based in California in the USA. And Kavena's work beautifully connects nodes of history to tell stories of shared resilience across the African diaspora. As we celebrate Black History Month every time in February, we will be speaking to him now on the importance of acknowledging our shared historical injustices. Mr. Kavena Hambira, good morning.
Good morning, Dapewa, and hello everyone in Namibia.
Thank you so much for making time to talk to us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, let's dive right in. Now, for those who might not be familiar with what Black History Month is and why it was started, kindly just give us a background history on that.
Yes, let me start by just reminding your viewers that Black history isn't something that can be confined to 1 month. And of course, it deserves to be celebrated year-round. But the history of Black History Month began as Negro History Month in 1926. It was spearheaded by African-American historian Carter Woodson. And it was done to highlight the often overlooked contribution of Black Americans. Over time, it really evolved into an annual celebration of February. It was officially recognized by President Gerald Ford in 1976. And at its core, Black History Month is really about reclaiming narratives, correcting historical erasures, and honoring the resilient achievements of Black communities here in the United States and across the African diaspora.
All right. What does Black History Month mean to you personally? And also, how do you observe it?
Black History Month is both a celebration and practice, right? So it's about how you show up, owning your power. Haitian American artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, example, wore his hair in an iconic dreadlock style. And that was really an act of reclamation of his Black identity and a rejection of Western standards and professionalism. So when I wear my hair, it grows to honor that same reason. But I believe also about the radical power of rest, right? We need to take the time to clear our minds, move our and clean our gut, right? Resting is just as revolutionary as thriving. And we often think about these experiences through our trauma, but Black History Month is also about Black joy, right? It's not only about the idea of us having shared colloquial or enslavement, but it's about celebrating our beauty, our triumphs, and our ability to thrive despite it all, right? How I personally observe it, personally, I immerse myself in Black art, literature, and a number of events. Here, I'm working through a few books. Bell Hooks is a good example of literature that I'm reading at the moment. I will be attending the premiere of Doug Harris's documentary about civil rights attorney John Hurt at the end of the week, launched by African author Ian Lee, travel book, Go Girl, the Black woman's book, Travel and Adventure, is really one of the first Black travel books of the modern era. And then next week, I'll be screening my short film titled Namibian at Harvard University and the broader Boston area.
All right. Now, as a Namibian lecturer in the States, how do you bridge the gap between African and African American experiences during Black History Month?
This is such an important question, Dapewa, because we have to acknowledge that we are not a monolith, right? There are multiple shades of Black. Black people are diverse, and our histories vary based on geography, culture, and lived experiences. One way that I bridge the gap is by emphasizing the historical and the contemporary connection between Africa and the diaspora within my lecture. I also challenge the narrative that separates Africa and African American history, this idea of a perceived wedge. We have to understand the systems of colonialism and slavery were interconnected global systems. The transatlantic slave trade that shaped Black American history is part of the same system that fueled European colonialism in Africa. So, by recognizing these shared struggles, we also create space for solidarity and collective action.
All right. You teach courses in Germany on genocide in Africa and in Europe. How do you connect these historical events to the broader narrative of Black History Month?
Yes, among other things, I teach, narrative, film, video, media, uh, visual storytelling. But when I do focus my work on the German genocide in Africa and Europe, and really examining the genocide of the Herero and Namibian, which was not just a local, but a precursor to the Holocaust in Europe, right? The genocide in Namibia between 1908 1908, excuse me, set the stage for racial ideology and extermination policies that later unfold on a much larger scale in Europe. And many people here in the United States, in particular, are unaware of Namibia's role in this. So Black History Month really offers an opportunity to connect these histories and bring that awareness forefront, right? But also remember, it's not just about unearthing those caveats of history that have been swathed over by dominant narratives. Rather, also asking students to grapple the question as to why some atrocities are acknowledged, like while others, right, like the Namibian genocide, are still met with resistance, right? Genocide denies them its place. So we have to acknowledge that.
All right. Now, aside from being a lecturer, you are also a filmmaker that explores themes of cultural exchange and also shared history. How imperative are your films in bringing knowledge of some of the injustices that Black people faced?
Yeah, so ultimately, I'm thinking about how we as Africans are often perceived in the Western media. And I'm very mindful about shaping narrative that tell a contemporary story. I'm a descendant particularly of the Herero and Awabo people. I'm on the ground, in the field, grew up in Namibia. So I'm really speaking to people who are directly connected as uh, descendants of the victims of the genocides. And so, if you're in the United States and you're hearing it from the horse's mouth, it really reframes your idea of this history beyond the abstraction of a text, beyond the theory of the institution of the archive, right? You're seeing Namibians in 2025 speaking about their ancestors who perished during this atrocity. And so that really reframed the history and it allows for a more personal connection to the story.
All right. Now, as a descendant of the Ovaherero and Wambo people, how have you merged your historical background and the injustices that faced not only in your teaching, but your films? And how important is it for you in telling the stories of your people and also just ultimately sharing them with the entire world?
So, as a descendant, my identity shapes my work. period, right? Growing up in Namibia, I was surrounded by stories, right? Stories about Emil Maharero, Captain Hendrik Witbooi, Chief Malume Dampayo. You know, these stories, both inform my teaching and my filmmaking. Excuse me, where I center the voice who have historically been silenced. But I'm also intertwined with the personal and the historical narrative. And in this way, I create both an academically rigorous product and a product that's equally emotionally resonant.
All right. Kevin, I'm sure you'll agree with me when we speak about visual storytelling as a powerful tool, but how do you use the narrative film and video in your teachings just to enhance the understanding of Black history and culture?
Yeah, so ultimately, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of solidarity, right? It's not just about sharing this history, but I want to be able to advocate for those impacted communities that are seeking justice for their ancestors, for their loved ones. So there's a component of the work that attempts to drive a call to action. But what I'm also doing is I'm offering a window. I'm offering a window into a unique caveat of history that many here in the United States might not be exposed to. But conversely, during my time here in the United States, I worked with impacted families families that have been impacted by state and community violence. Love Not Blood campaign, Families United for Justice here in the state of California.
Yeah.
And in doing so, through that engagement, I'm also inserting narratives about Namibia. And so then you have African Americans, Black Americans, who are hearing from a person or a perspective that they didn't normally have access to. My positionality as an African or an Indian filmmaker in the United States also offers a window for those living in the United States. You get a sense of how life and how the Namibian new Namibian project, we're only 35 years old this year, is being constructed. And there's a lot of interest. We shouldn't sell ourselves short as short of Namibia. There is a huge interest in Namibian stories, in African stories, and we have a role to play as we reshape this medium. Film is only, particularly documentary film, is only 102 years old. Think about Charity's work, seminal film, of the North. So we're the new griots. We are reshaping and adding to this canon, right? Much like a drop of water flows into a waterfall, our individual story as Namibia flows into the broader narrative.
We often speak about the power of acknowledging shared historical injustices. Kavena, how do you think this can help in fostering unity and understanding among Black communities worldwide?
Yeah, understanding that colonialism and enslavement are global systems, that really helps unite us. I can give you an example. Namibians might not know, much like Americans might not know, but after the hetero and Nam genocide ended, there were Namibian leaders, Chief Samuel Maharero, even Hosea Kutako, who reached out to leaders across the diaspora. Marcus Garvey of the Universal Negro Improvement Association to gain international support to build solidarity with Black communities that have been impacted by colonial violence, right? Just look at where I'm in Oakland, California, home of the Black Panther Party of self-defense, right? That's what they used to be called before they were just simply known as the Black Panther Party. They built global alliances with liberation movements in Africa, Caribbean, and beyond. So I really think that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have to look at those models, right? And think about how we can implement them in a context, in a contemporary context. And really thinking about also, I grew up in the 90s. I remember at one point you had, uh, African American group of businessmen, from Detroit, in the form of Anu Smith, Don Barden, and partnered with the Namibian government, to introduce the brand Chevrolet to Namibia. And one of the really creative ideas to promote this partnership was to bring Michael Jackson to Namibia. Now imagine this. This he at the time was the biggest superstar in the world. And he was in our little Namibia, right? He came to Namibia. And this was because of the genius and the creativity of this collaboration between our people here in the United States and on the continent, right? So again, these are not new ideas. These models exist. What we really need to do is take them off the shelf, dust them off, apply them to today's context.
All right. Kavena, I'm curious. Talk to us about some of the challenges you faced in bringing your films and also your lectures to a wider audience. And also, how did you say you overcame some of these challenges?
I'm a filmmaker, so funding is always going to be a challenge. Particularly when you're talking about independent films that are focused on African history. You also find a lot of institutional resistance, right? Many are unwilling to confront, the uncomfortable history, like Germany's colonial past. But there are many ways, many people to overcome these challenges. Excuse me. What I've done, as an example, is build partnerships with universities, museums, and other cultural institutions across the United States. Right now, we have a short film, Namibian, being licensed, educational license with the University of Michigan. And we've been invited the Colby College Jewish Department to develop a curriculum, using the film to teach a class about Namibia and the genocide that took place against the Herero and Nama. So, I'm finding that as the work starts to live and find legs in the world, gain more traction. And what I would say is that we really need to continue to support local content. In Namibia, we have a lot of young filmmakers, a lot of young creators, have brilliant ideas. We continue to support them and find ways to access the global spaces. Like I said, we have so much to offer as Namibians, and we shouldn't hold ourselves back. We should keep ourselves small.
All right. Now, Kavena, let's just bring it back home now. What do you think we can learn as the Namibian community? What can we learn from the African community as it celebrates, its blackness in all its power? And how can we also adapt some of those celebrations that they do in Black History Month for ourselves right here in Namibia?
Yeah, Black History Month is a huge deal in the United States, even more so. It's not just a once in a year, as earlier. Africans, we tend to celebrate our Blackness by embracing the richness of culture, through its music, its art, its storytelling. But one of the things I'd love to see more of is collaboration between African and African American communities, and particularly African communities across the diaspora, not just here in the United States, particularly in areas around art, the cultural tourism space, and entrepreneurship. And I really want to leave you with a quote I love to read this because it's important. Bell Hooks writes, I quote, that love is an action, never simply feeling. What that means to us is that if we truly love our people, we must take action. And we do this by telling our stories, and building the future that we as Black people deserve, right? So let's keep showing up, not just for Black History, but for Black history every single day.
All